You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 86, Ian Gillan Band, Scarabus. And coming to you from the suburbs of Chicago, where I'm all out of storage space, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from Rhode Island, your co-host, John, Captain Crunch Matola.
Captain Crunch. So you're either referring to the notorious 70s phone hacker, Captain Crunch, or the breakfast cereal.
I didn't know that there was a phone hacker.
His name was Captain Crunch, yeah. And he figured out there was like a series of like tones you could use to like basically you could go to a payphone and like he had like this little thing, like a little whistle or something, and you go and you make a special thing and it would give him like a free phone call and stuff like that. So he was like a hacker before even like computers were commonplace. He was like, yeah, he hacked like mostly phone lines and stuff. Yeah. But I'm assuming you're not speaking of him.
No, I'm referring to the cereal, which I was never allowed to have.
You were never allowed to have Captain Crunch?
I was never allowed. Nope, I wasn't allowed to have any of the fun cereals.
Your mom was kind of like a health nut back in the 80s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was on the forefront of all that stuff. So, like all the other kids were having Captain Crunch and Boo Berry and whatever else, Tricks, and I was having like grape nuts.
Grape nuts.
Cheerios weren't bad. Cheerios were, they were like the best, like boring cereal. I guess you'd have Kix. Kix was another one. They were just kind of plain. But
did she let you have the Honey Nut Cheerios at least?
I don't know. Maybe sometimes it was usually plain, which plain actually Cheerios, I didn't mind so much. But
yeah, plain Cheerios are pretty plain.
But dude, grape nuts, they were the worst. It was like eating sand.
Yep,
grape nuts and yogurt. It was like eating sand and yogurt.
My aunt that lived next door was a health nut, and yeah, I remember sitting on her porch and I poured myself a bowl. The thing about grape nuts is they're so dense that you pour like what seems like a normal bowl of cereal of grape nuts. And I remember like I got like 3/4 of the way through the bowl and I just felt like I like all of a sudden like there was a brick in my stomach. I was just like, oh, like I couldn't even move. Yeah, because there was. Although, have you ever had grape nut pudding? That's really good.
No.
Yeah.
No, I've been traumatized for life. No, that. But no, it was all that stuff too. Even like years later, like I tried. There was this thing because I was eating vegetarian and vegan for a while, and so there was a thing back when I was younger. They were the tofu version of hot dogs. They were called tofu pups instead of hot dogs.
Tofu pups.
And so, yeah, tofu pups. So, yeah, they've been around for what, since 1979 or something. So, anyways, they still make them, and I was trying to find like a alternative for that, and I had them, and they were just as crappy as they were when I was a kid. Because it was like tofu isn't bad if it's prepared right, but I mean, It was just this mushy ass. Sorry excuse for a hot dog substitute. And then of course there have been new meat substitutes that have come out since then, and I actually found a great hot dog one that I actually still have sometimes. But I was just like, wow, this product was like garbage, and it's still, I don't even know how they're still like making or selling them, because it's like, when you have like clearly superior products in the market, how is this even competing? It's just this mushy ass thing. I don't even know how to describe it. It was awful.
Years ago when I was living in New York, I went on a work trip, and I forgot where we were somewhere in upstate New York, like along in the Hudson Valley, and we stopped. There was like this food truck there, and we all stopped there to just get a bite to eat. And one of the items on the menu was the vegan hot dog. So a few vegans in the group, and they said, "Okay, we'll get the vegan hot dog." And what they served up, I swear I'm not making this up. It was a hot dog bun with a with a steamed carrot in it. And they just served this up. So people was just like, they were just looking at this like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like they put ketchup and mustard on it, and they're like, this is absolutely disgusting. So it's like a soft carrot in a bun. Just absolutely foul. I mean,
there
at
are
that
some
point, I'd
people that
almost
just
rather
don't
have
know how to do it.
I'd almost rather have a tofu pup at that point. No, I'm a big fan of like with the vegetarian and vegan stuff, like not trying to like, oh, fake chicken parmesan and fake this and that. I'm a big fan of like, you can do lots of delicious stuff with vegetables. You don't have to pretend to be meat.
Right.
So on the surface that would fit my criteria, but they kind of should have just called it the steamed carrot in a bun. And then of course they would have sold exactly zero. The vegans would have been like, could I just have the bun or just the carrot, or don't steam it or something? Like even just like handing you a raw carrot would have been preferable to whatever the heck that we're trying to do with that. But,
I would have put like mustard and relish on a raw carrot before a boiled one.
Oh yeah. Actually, on a raw carrot, it wouldn't have been half bad, but yeah, absolutely disgusting.
But I mean, I just like to qualify that I was not a healthy vegan at all. I ate like the most processed shit that you can imagine.
Yes,
but it was good.
Yeah, people think vegan is healthy,
Some of it
and
still
they're
is.
just like, oh, I'm having this vegan chocolate cake. It's like it's got like 6 times the amount of saturated fat of a regular chocolate cake because it's all palm oil and
same thing with this. Same thing with gluten free.
Yeah,
Same thing with
exactly.
gluten free. You ever look at the fat content in that stuff? It tastes like, you're just like, hey, this cake tastes like sawdust. And I'm like, yeah, and the frosting has 10 times more fat in it. Hey,
Exactly.
So
it's healthy for me because it doesn't have any of that gluten that I'm trying to avoid, which I don't know why.
Yeah, great. You're not breaking out in a rash and farting into your pillows, but you're gaining 60 pounds. Good for you.
So I signed up for a Gmail account. God, it must have been 15 years ago or whenever it first came out. And for the last 6 months, I've been getting this message whenever I log into Gmail. At the top, it says, you're dangerously low on, you're at 95% of your storage space. You're at 96% because I use Google Drive and actually use it for the show, for all of our stuff. And for the past 6 months, I've been like, don't bother me with that. And then today I logged on right before the show and it says, you're out of storage space and will soon be unable to send or receive emails. I'm like, what the hell? I can't believe that this actually happened after 6 months of daily reminders that it was going to happen. I did nothing. I changed nothing. I deleted nothing. And then I'm like, oh, I can't believe this. This is totally bogus that this free service I've been using for 15 years and not deleting anything is like finally full. So I'm gonna have to do something about that, delete some stuff or God forbid, have to actually start paying Google for storage. But
I'm just kind of impressed that it took 6 months of warnings for it to get to the point where you couldn't do anything anymore.
I was just like, they're bluffing. They're never gonna shut me off. There's no way. Like these guys, they're all talk. They're not gonna actually close my account or anything. But apparently, I'm in the danger zone now. It's officially time to be worried.
Yeah, they're not going to get rid of me, a big old mooch who doesn't pay anything for this service. Why would they get rid of me? Their best customer.
I've been using this free service to store like 97,000 emails and like 50,000 documents for 15 years without paying a damn thing. And now I can't believe I'm finally out of space. Everything's come home to roost.
Sons of bitches.
But anyway, if you like what you're hearing, again, I don't know why we shouldn't do this after this point of the show because we're just shooting the crap. But hey, if you want to support the show, if presumably this isn't the first time you've listened, it doesn't go like this through the whole show. We usually at some point start talking about Deep Purple related stuff. If you want to support us, there's a few ways you can do it. One is leave us a review and a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts. That helps new people discover the show. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all that good stuff. And you can become a patron on Patreon or support the show over PayPal with a recurring payment. Like so many fine people do. Really appreciative to them for doing that. and they're the people that help support the show. Just, we don't have an advertising model. We're not selling razors or Squarespace or Dunkin' Donuts or any of that. We are offering you a product. If you receive value for that product and you would like to give us some value back, we would highly appreciate it. And there's a number of people do, starting with the grand daddy super supporter pretty much since day one. I believe our first patron. I'd have to go back and check, but if not, certainly one of the first ones, probably our first one. The $25 Super Trooper tier, we have Steve Seaborg of nameonanything.com and alltheworldsofstage.net, who hopefully we're finally finalizing t-shirt and merch designs with, and hopefully we'll have that in soon to be able to put up. Check our social media. I don't know when it's going to finally be live, but you'll probably hear about it on social media before the show. By the time it gets to the show, hopefully we'll be sold out of everything. But if you want to check our social media channels. At the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier, we have Ryan M. The $15 Highball Shooter tier, Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg. At the Turn It Up to $11 tier, we have Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. At the $10 Someone Came tier, Gerald Kelly. At the episode $6.66 tier, we have Richard Fusey via PayPal. At the $5.99 Nice Price tier, we have Fielding Fowler. At the $5 Money Lender tier, we have Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, and Kenny Wymore. At the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, Peter Gardeau, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Will Porter, and a new patron, Andrew Meyer. And Andrew writes and says, we had a little bit of a back and forth and said, happy to be here. You guys are definitely helping me deal with the pandemic with more of a smile. Cheers from Philly. So thank you, Andrew. We've gotten quite a few messages like that from patrons and other listeners that we're helping them maintain their sanity, which we appreciate, because doing this is helping us maintain our sanity as well. So thank you to all of you for listening and entertaining us. At the $1 made up name tier, we have Els Murders, Spacey Noodles, The Frightful Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, and Steven Somerville, the Concerto 1999 fanatic. Oh my God, look at all those great people. Thanking our brothers at the Deep Dive Podcast Network, Sabbath Bloody Podcast, Skinner Reconsidered, T-Bone's Prime Cuts, In the Lap of the Pods, and the Magicians Podcast, which... Had we listened to the first Magicians podcast since our last episode? No, it's no, because it came out Wednesday after the last time we recorded. Nope. So as of recording this, it's under a week old.
Yeah, and he's had what is it? I think like 6 episodes by now.
I think 4. I think he launched 4 all at the same time. Yep.
Well, he had done like a introductory episode. I don't know if you really count that, but there was like a kind of an introductory episode, and it was like a
trailer. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a trailer. There was like a teaser or 2 or anything, but I basically I was messaging Scott and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll get to it when I can. Then I wound up like binging them all in like a day and a half because they're not that long.
Yeah, they're really
his episodes aren't that long too. Yeah, you can't like binge our show, but and I'm already learning a lot and I enjoy it. And I always give I got to give credit to like guys like him. Rye, Sabbath Bloody Podcast, guys that sit at a mic and do a whole show on their own, because and I was telling Scott the other day too, like I don't think I could do that and be maybe I could be interesting, but I don't know if I would sound as cohesive or something. I feel like these guys have been doing it for a long time too, like Scott's got a really radio voice, sounds very together. Like, I feel like I'd just be stumbling through it. Like I need a foil,
Yeah.
I need somebody else to bounce ideas off of. Yeah, exactly. I do better in a group or with another person. So I have a lot of respect for, somebody can do that and do a good job of it as well.
Oh yeah. And like what we do in many ways is so much easier because we're just chatting about stuff and listening to stuff together and bouncing things back and forth. And it probably takes him longer to do an episode than it does for us, even if his episode's 30 minutes long and ours is 2 hours. Just all the editing and the compile and like when I've tried to do anything by myself like that, it's you you second guess everything you say, and you go back and you edit. And when it's just a live discussion, it's a lot more, it's a lot a lot easier to pull off. But he does a great job, and I love the fact
Right.
that he's got Mick Box basically on every episode talking about the song and giving
Yeah.
like a little intro. So I mean, God, he's got the endorsement from the band. He's got interviews with the actual band members talking about the songs before he plays them, and he's got his own personal great insight and history with the albums and the music. And it's awesome because I was really excited. I loved listening to Sabbath Bloody podcast because for the for most of the Sabbath stuff, the early Sabbath stuff, I knew it really well. And then he got into an era I didn't know, so I got to learn about that. And with Scott's, it's like I don't know anything about Uriah Heep, and now I've listened to the first four songs on that first album, and I feel like, wow, like, and it's also one of those things like, how did I miss this band? Like, I never like really encountered anyone that had like the albums, and just kind of, I never got a foothold into it, and they're great,
Right.
and this is just the first album we're listening to, so I'm looking forward to hearing them, get into their own, and you get more, hearing the first band of any album, you're really hearing something that's like kind of, maybe they haven't hit their stride yet, but even with what I've heard, I'm loving it. So I can't wait to hear, like, 2, 3 albums in, 4 albums in, just really hear them start really getting experimental, and maybe getting a little bit more money to record a little more complicated albums and stuff like that. So I'm excited about it, and Scott's doing a great job.
Definitely.
And then the last person we thank, as we always do, is Jorg Planer, the patron saint and archivist of the Deep Purple podcast, for all his support and help over the years, for just giving us information, keeping us on the straight and narrow, correcting all the many mistakes that we make with such grace and poise and good humor. We really appreciate it, and just a great resource to have. So yeah, it's as this episode comes out, we're in December now, and I've got a delicious Christmas beer here that I'm going to be cracking open for today's episode. I like the Christmas ales. They're kind of festive. You get a little, whatever. They usually just throw some nutmeg or whatever in there. But it's nice to have a nice malty Christmas beer. A winter warmer, if you will, in these colder months. I've got my fireplace going behind me, if you can see that there, and I'm just feeling in the festive spirit. So cheers, John. All right.
Yeah, cheers. I'd drink along with you too, except that I ate and drank yesterday like I was a prison inmate on death row, and it was my last meal. So I was like, woke up like with a cold sweat last night, and I had agita all day, and like, it was terrible.
Yeah, I really don't like.
I just got over it. So
I don't like that feature of being our age, where you eat a little too much, or you drink, like, God forbid you have 2 beers or something, and you're just like, you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't sleep, and you're like, what is going on? I didn't even catch a buzz, and I feel like I could have had 20 beers in my youth and woke up the next day and just ready to fight the world, and now I'm falling apart. But why? What was the big celebration yesterday? Just being off work?
I woke up at 2 a.m. and I wanted to die. That's all I know. No, there was no big celebration. Dinner at my parents'.
Oh, well, that's a celebration.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was no, it wasn't a party or anything. It's just like, my mother is, cooks, and I eat it. So it's like, but I mean, we have food, we have wine. I think it was the wine too. Like, if I have too much wine, like, and they like eat like late around like 7:30, 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I was really tired too. So I think one of my problems, which is another thing, is like, you could just like eat like a horse when you're like 20 and then just like collapse and you'll be fine. But it's just like, if you eat too close to like falling asleep, then that does a number like right here. So I think a lot of it was like the alcohol. It was like a heavy dinner. I think it was like it's like pot roast, vegetables, mashed potatoes, like everything heavy and fatty.
Yep, and then go right to bed.
So yep. And then, well, I didn't just be like, like clean my plate and then be like, well, good night. It's just like, I went home and I was just like, man, I'm tired. I fell asleep like on the couch or something. And then I just, like I said, I woke up like I was having a friggin' nightmare, and I'm like, oh, and it was a nightmare.
Yep.
So very, very light today, very light on the food, no booze. So enjoy your drink.
Yeah.
That's my roundabout way of saying enjoy your beer. I'll have one next week.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a rough age. I'll tell you that. But yeah, this week we're here to discuss the final Ian Gillan Band album. Probably not the final Ian Gillan Band episode. They've got quite a bit of great live stuff and things that we can cover. But yeah, we're here to talk about the last proper album. They only had 3 albums. We've done Child in Time, their first album. We've done Clear Air Turbulence, their second album, and then this album finishes up the discography, coming out, I think 6 months after Clear Air Turbulence. So they released that in the earlier part of 1977. This album came out in October of 1977. I think it might have been May and October, very very close to each other. And
That's crazy to think about how bands used to do that, huh?
I know. I mean, this band, they
just
put out
release albums so quickly.
Yeah, because they had 3 albums in probably year and a half. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, that's unheard of these days. You've got bands in the studio 10 years without an album. And I think, like we've talked about before, it definitely helped that they would put out shorter albums, 35, 40-minute albums with 8 to 10 songs, versus now, like, there's this seemingly an obligation to fill up have an hour-long album come out, and that takes a lot more time to write and to produce and record. So something to be said about that. But we left Clear Air Turbulence was obviously the band had kind of made a big swing from Child of Time and come into like a very progressive jazz fusiony sort of work, 6 very long songs. And here we are. Gillan found himself at Island Records. We talked about that, I think, in the Clear Turbulence episode, where he'd be playing pool like in the morning with Bob Marley and hanging out, which again, I would love to hear stories about, or why nobody filmed a picture of Ian, or took a picture of Ian Gillan and Bob Marley playing pool together. Like, it seems like one of those ones you should see in Ian Gillan's book or something, and you go to the center and look at all those pictures and just see this really cool picture of them shooting pool together. And apparently, speaking of Uriah Heep, former Uriah Heep singer John Byron also found a home at Island Records. So and Island Records being named after, it's being I believe they were based in Jamaica. I'll have to look that up because I didn't actually look it up, but it was founded in Jamaica, and obviously the big home of Bob Marley. So like we said, Scarabus comes out about 6 months later, and the goal of Scarabus was basically Ian Gillan finished up with Clear Air Turbulence and was like, listen, we're going to focus more on my vocals and rock sort of music rather than kind of all this jazzy sort of stuff we were doing. He's got the same lineup, which we had throughout the whole Ian Gillan band. We've got John Gustafson on bass and vocals, Ray Fenwick on guitar and vocals, Colin Towns on keyboard and vocals, percussion was Mark Nassif, and then obviously Ian Gillan on lead vocals. So not any sort of lineup change, just the same guys we've been talking about. Yeah, and with that, there's not a ton of information. We'll get more, I guess, into after the album. We'll get a little bit more into the aftermath of the album and what happened. But here you go. You've got the album cover here. Now, this is the album cover I had. There is a second album cover, which we'll get into in a second. But I was always under the impression
this is the later one, isn't it?
Well, this is the first one. So I had to ask I had to go on Twitter, and I posted the 2 album covers and said, hey, out of curiosity, those of you, some of the folks that were buying the records at the time, which one of these did you have? Overwhelmingly, people said they had this one. They bought the album when it first came out, and it had this album cover.
Okay.
So I thought it was the other way around.
I had read somewhere that this was I thought this was like the reissue album cover, and the original one was the one with the painting on it or whatever.
No, I thought the same thing, and I think why we thought that was because when it was released in the US, it was released with this alternate cover. But then when they did the reissue, they went back to the original cover. So for us, it seemed like this was the newer cover, and to folks in the UK, this was the original cover.
Hmm.
So it's a very simple cover. Just got the Ian Gillan Band logo. It's got this very foreboding sunset in the background, the red orange sun setting, and then you've got the members of the band. Kind of one of the more famous Ian Gillan Band pictures of all five of the guys in black shirts with their heads backlit by the sun behind them.
Yeah, it's a really cool cover.
Yeah, I always liked it. It seemed like it's I like it features all the members of the band. It's very simple. Um, and
Yeah, but it's got that, like you said, it's got that orange sunset behind it, which is like it's small, but it's kind of effective. I don't like a touch, that small touch. I don't know, like instead of just like a backlit studio photo, it's just kind of like almost looks like they're in a desert or something,
yeah.
or not a desert, but even like maybe another planet
Mm.
or something, like I don't know. It's really cool. And who's the guy all the way on the left, because he looks like Robert Smith from The Cure.
That's Mark Nosif. And remember we had
Oh,
talked about I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or not, but during our Butterfly Ball episode where we reviewed the movie and the concert, there was a guy on stage who we kept saying was like, is that Jimmy? He looks like Jimmy Page. Is that Jimmy Page playing the tambourine? Like who let
all
him in?
right.
Somebody had
And that was him.
more recently had said, "Oh, the guy you thought was Jimmy Page is actually Mark Nosif," and I was like, "Oh, okay." So he was just on. It's funny to have somebody of Mark Nosif's skill level just playing a tambourine. That's when you know you've got a really good lineup on stage. And Mark Nosif is just shaking a tambourine. He was like leaning against somebody at one point, just shaking it and just having a blast. But yeah, it's great. Yeah, you've got Mark Nosif, Colin Towns, Gillan in the center, and then Fenwick and Gustafsson on the end. And Gillan tells a really good story in his book about you see Johnny Gustafsson on the end looking kind of gruff, looking a little. Um, but he tells a great story in his book about he kind of really uh, looked up to Johnny Gustafsson, and he says when he was working with him, I think it must have been during Ian Gillan Band, he came in one day and he said he looked like hell. He had like a beard and his hair was all like just disheveled and he just looked terrible. And he was holding like this like suitcase. And then he went into the bathroom and he came out and his hair was all cut. He was shaved. He looked like he said he looked like a star. Like he just looked like amazing. So I don't know if he just let himself get to the point where it was like, I don't know if he was on a bender. Who knows what happened, but sounds like he was quite the interesting character. If you want to hear some really good Johnny Gustafsson stories, check out Ian Gillan's book. It's pretty good. The back cover has some kind of pretty well-known shots of the band. Ian Gillan in the center with the guitar there, just kind of looks like he's holding court, telling a story or something. Um, you've got what looks to be the same exact sunset from the front on the back. It's pretty simple. It's just got all the guys, all the names, and then it's got the track listing and some thanks. Thanks to it seems like they're thanking mostly thanking their what do you call their equipment
They're
providers.
endorsers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yamaha, paste cymbals, roto roto sound strings. So, um, and a few people, Jerry Black, who is their manager, I believe, and a few other people. So,
That's one thing that I kind of like, and we've seen this a lot before, but I kind of miss about record albums and stuff like that, which seem to be a really 70s thing, is like that you flip the album over and there's that collage of pictures of the band members, which just
mhm.
seem to be like, just randomly picked. They're like not necessarily great pictures. It's just,
Mhm.
yeah, just slap that one on of Ian Gillan telling a story about when he shot pool with Bob Marley. It's fine. Um, but
We
it's
can hope.
like, but yeah, it's kind of like a cool, I don't know, it's just kind of a cool kind of thing that I don't know, they used to do it a lot. And not that, you know, anybody release as physical product anymore. I mean, they still do, but maybe not as many people consume it. But that's something I noticed about a lot of like 70s and early 80s album covers is like that collage of band pictures on the back.
And you generally just
You know, I
have
thought it
that
was neat.
yeah, you have just the album cover basically, right? There's usually not much else. um
Yeah,
and that's why I think we were talking about in a recent episode, like my biggest gripe with Spotify, like I wish they had like the album
this
cover
kind
and
of
the album
stuff.
backs and things you could like scroll through and look through while you're listening. I mean, granted, most of the time you're driving or you're working out or who knows what, but
Yeah.
it would be great to just be able to stop and say, you know, who's playing on this, or have the information at your fingertips and be able to look at some cool stuff. Um, but yeah, it's really cool. In fact, I never realized this until I looked at it now that Colin Towns is sitting at an open grand piano. I always thought like, why is the picture of Colin Towns so much smaller than the other ones? And now I'm looking at it. It's him, and then the piano is in the foreground. So, but it's so dark
Right.
that it looks like it's just a tiny picture of him, and everyone else has got a nice big picture. But I love that picture of Johnny Gustafson, that awesome. I think it's a Gibson SG bass, whatever sort of kind of Telecaster ish sort of guitar Fenwick has. Gillan with the Les Paul, which is really cool, and Mark Nosif looks like he's just having a blast hitting that China boy while with his V-neck on, having the time of his life. The record itself, nothing too crazy, just the Island Records logo. Um, then here we get to the U.S. cover. Now the U.S. album cover could not be more different. It looks more like a Dio cover, or what
Yeah.
other bands would have a cover like almost Iron? It's missing Eddie, but almost like an Iron Maiden feel to it.
Judas Priest.
Judas Priest, Black, maybe like a mid period, like or late '80s, early '90s Black Sabbath album. Um,
Yeah.
but it's this weird, like witch coming out of what looks like the waves or the ocean. She's seemingly like kind of weirdly naked, but sort of not. She's got skulls around her neck, and she's holding this giant like blood red scythe over her head. There's like screaming ghoul faces in the background, a giant python hissing at you, some sort of weird ogre with like a alien looking. Oh, actually, it looks like a mummy, like he's coming out of mummy, like
Yeah.
the mummy wrappings falling off of him. He's like, but he's looking at you, and it's kind of scary. And then he's got like this weird
Mhm.
pot beside him with like a green mist coming out of it. And there's like an ogre in the back left with like like a skull chest. Very very metal looking album cover.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you saw this and you didn't know what was contained within, you would just be like, this album's gonna be heavy.
And I can only imagine somebody buying this thing. Well, I guess in 1977 you wouldn't have had, but if you found this album like a few years later, say you found this in like the mid 80s, you're like, this is gonna be so heavy, and you put it on, you'd be like so disappointed. This is like not at all
Yeah.
what you were expecting. And not that it doesn't rock in places, but you'll hear when we get into the first track, like this is not what you were going to be expecting right at the very
Yeah, but I
beginning of
mean
this
you're thinking
album.
like Sabbath heavy. Like
Oh
this
yeah,
looks
or
like it would be like a Sabbath or a
galloping guitar.
Judas Priest.
You'd expect some really
Exactly, like a darker metal
some
or
howling
darker hard
banshee
rock.
vocals. And but yeah, very odd that they
Exactly.
decided to go this like very opposite direction here. So the original design seems to have been done by Brian Cook and Trevor Key, who worked for a company called Cook Key. They were a design agency that worked for Virgin Records. They designed the famous Virgin logo. Actually, they did covers for XTC, Sex Pistols, Phil Collins, Wham, and Peter Gabriel. Now this cover is is it comes from a movie poster from a 1976 horror movie called The Witch Who Came from the Sea, and this was based on a painting by Frank Frazetta. So Frank Frazetta was like
Mm.
um, a very well known like sci-fi kind of artist who did this kind of artwork. Is well known for it. He did a lot of work for like movies and things like that. So very very well known artist. Um, and actually, I can find that the witch that came from the sea here. Find this to show you, but this is the um, one second here. This is the actual movie poster that it's based on. The witch that came from the sea, and you can see the similarities here. But it's weird that they kind of took the same character. So she's basically looks very similar. She got a snake going up her arm. She got the same skull necklace and the same kind of body configuration, and she's holding like a severed head that she apparently cut off with this scythe. So yeah, so you could see how it's kind of based on that. Although she's quite a bit more ghoulish and scary looking on the album cover, because it looks like her hair is almost snakes. And on the movie poster, for a woman that just decapitated a man, she looks a little more pleasant. Even though she's holding a severed head, I would rather hang out with her because she seems a little more on the level than the other one. And then yeah, so yeah, he did a lot of like I said, a lot of movie posters, and he also did some album covers too. He did album covers for Molly Hatchet, Nazareth, and Yngwie Malmsteen. The back cover of the album takes those same photos we saw from the UK version, and then kind of places them on this like sort of greenish marble-looking background. And then has all the same information: the players, the songs, the thanks. So not a huge departure from the back on the back cover, but that front cover could not be any more different.
Yeah.
So, actually, I just thought of something. How many people? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess it's 5. So maybe each one of these creatures on the front cover is supposed to represent one of the people that's on the main UK version. So like maybe the witch is Ian Gillan, the snake is Colin Towns, the mummy is John Gustafson. Who knows? I don't think that that's actually what they did, but it'd be interesting to see which one would be which. That would be one for a future edition of the Deep Purple Game Show, where we could say you have to assign characters to all of these characters. All right, but that's all the album art there. Very interesting. It's always interesting when you have like different album covers, especially such wildly different ones. And the other two, Ian Gillan, and I don't know if they were trying to. It could have been just a marketing ploy in the States to say like we're going to try to go maybe entice more people with the album cover. Maybe looking at just 5 guys standing there won't be enticing enough. Maybe this will turn more people onto the album. Who knows? But with that, are we ready to dive into some of these tracks?
You know I am.
I always have to check.
That sounded really. Sounds really pissy. You know I am. Just do it. Why? Why do you have to check? That's what we're here for.
I never want to assume anything. You know, I don't want to. If you're not comfortable listening to, these tracks, I don't want to force you into anything.
No, let's listen to Whitesnake instead.
We'll save this one for later. All right, so here we go. We're going to kick it off with the opener. Just imagine having that metal album cover in your hands, and then you put it on, and this is what you hear. Promising so far from a heavy standpoint. Then a little more mellow, more classic rock sounding right at this point, you know? Is that Boston song? That's like a song by Boston. So very I think he could have gotten back together with Blackmore with the lyrics he's coming up with on this song. He's talking about wizards and lizards and Scarabus and sorcery. I mean, these are hitting some real good beats for Blackmore. He would have loved this.
I mean, the music is pretty mellow. I've always really liked this melody. But his singing is like really powerful. Like he's just really belting it out.
Yeah.
Kind of mellow song almost.
And it sounds more like the delivery you'd expect from Gillan versus Ian Gillan Band. Only Gillan could deliver these lyrics and make it sound awesome. Here we go. Now this is an Ian Gillan Band breakdown right here. Man. he's doing all these crazy tom.
It's crazy. Yeah, he knows how to keep it interesting. Well, I mean, these are a great bunch of players, though. They're not doing anything you'd expect.
No, they're. I mean, that's what I always loved about Ian Gillan Band. As much as I
drumming
love
is pretty wild on this song.
Oh yeah, Mark Nausey doesn't stop for a second. Like I was gonna say, as much as I love Gillan, the band, it's confusing. As much as I love the Gillan Band, Ian Gillan Band always resonated a little bit more with me for this reason, that they were just all over the place like this. I really always loved it. And they go into these
they got a little more
grooves.
Yeah, creative with some of their song arrangements.
I love on the last one, he always kind of, he poops out, but he's doing it on purpose, obviously, but he's just like, I'm gonna hit this wood block. I wonder if Gillan played any guitar on this. I don't think it said he did. Probably just from like a writing standpoint, he would have been.
That'll be my guess.
There's some weird, like, sort of like haunting notes just lingering on after the song. But I thought it's like, a thing I really like about that song is it hits a lot of the, like I said, it hits a lot of those marks from Clearer Turbulence. It's a much more straightforward arrangement than you get on Clearer Turbulence. It goes into those almost that the verse and the instrumental part are such different pieces that seem to fit together really well. And it's the lyrics are just like, let's try Scarabus pie, leg of dog and a lizard's eye, all this like crazy, like, he's making this weird witch's brew, breath of a goat and a dead man's hair. The whole song is like that. It's just, two toads and one a mouse, all these weird, like, sort of lines that he's dropping in there. Yet then you've got the it sounds like something you'd hear on classic rock radio all of a sudden. And it's just very interesting, creative, and all over the place.
And like you said, Ian Gillan's the only one that could deliver those kind of lyrics and not like be laughed out of I don't know, rock and roll.
it might even be too much for like Dio and Blackmore. They would have been like, okay, enough with the swords and sorcery stuff. Whoa, slow down. It's almost too much.
Take it easy, buddy. Slow down there, killer.
So what do you think? What do you think of Scarabus? The track.
Scarabus.
Opening track.
Scarabus pie. Ooh, sounds good. Maybe I'll have it for Thanksgiving. The Scarabus gets a 4 rating. A rating of 4. It gets a 4 rating. What am I talking about?
It's 4 slices of Scarabus pie.
Yeah, 4 slices of Scarabus pie. There you go.
Somebody was mentioning recently how they wish we would bring back our weird rating systems, because we don't really talk about it that much anymore. So maybe this will be the episode. 4
Rich,
slices of Scarabus pie.
Yeah, Rich. So this is for you.
Oh, is it Rich?
Friend. Yeah.
There's others that have mentioned it too, though.
Yeah.
That's
all right.
Rich mentioned it recently too.
All right. So 4 slices of Scarabus pie. I think with a little whipped cream on the side. It's I think I pretty much said it all. I think it's a really it's an interesting arrangement, like from the everything that the drums are doing to the melody, to like Gillan like really belting the vocals out. I think that like Gillan makes the whole song, because if you had somebody else singing it, maybe doing something else which would be more obvious, which would probably not to be singing with such power, then it probably wouldn't have been as standout opening track. But you know, this really proves that it was called the Ian Gillan Band for a reason.
And yeah, just like we said before we got into the tracks, Gillan wanted to kind of take the focus a little bit more away from the kind of wild arrangements and bring it back to him, which it should be. It's his band. And that's, you know, as great as his band is, and as much as I love them, the draw was that Ian Gillan was in it. So I will also give this track a 4 slices of delicious Scarabus pie. And at Thanksgiving this year, well, it's going to be just me and my wife and my kids. Maybe we'll make an apple pie, a pumpkin pie, and a Scarabus pie. That's the way you could just be like, what would you like? A slice of apple, pumpkin, or Scarabus? Maybe I wonder if there's any recipes out there for Scarabus pie. If you got a good one, let us know.
Yeah, well, you know, just in case like everybody doesn't like it, maybe get a Scarabus like half pie.
Yes. Oh man. Okay. So next track we have up is called Twin Exhausted. Very frantic.
Yeah. Like that groove.
Yeah, and that thumping bass. And this is a classic Gillan song. Hitting those octaves in the bass, it works so up. Bing, 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 bing.
And then you got the drums back here.
Just choking up that hi-hat.
Oh yeah, that just adds to the whole. That adds to the whole chorus or bridge, whatever this is.
Yeah, I feel it's like impossible in Ian Gillan Band songs to know what the verse and the chorus are.
Pre-chorus. Love that hi-hat.
And lyrically, I mean, you go from a song about like spiders and lizards and all that sort of stuff to a song that's about talking about my Buick and my Studebaker, and it's like a standard song about a car.
Yeah.
feel like Ray Fenwick's holding back on this album so far.
That's still, I mean, the song's got like a really good pace to it and a really great groove.
It's
I always
very driving. Pun intended, I guess.
Ha.
That's a very a very great Ian Gillan line. Barracuda, you are ruder than a long-legged bitch I know. Classic Gillan line.
Yeah, he's definitely unique lyricist.
It's like this kind of saloon feel to the what he's doing on the keys there. That's awesome. Fade out on the piano solo.
You're almost doing like a
that little
woman from
arpeggiated thing he's
Tokyo
doing.
type thing. I mean, not like Woman from Tokyo, but kind of the same idea as
Yeah, yeah.
you
I
know,
was thinking
going out
more
on the,
like I was
you know.
thinking kind of like almost like the piano version of Speed King that they did.
Hmm.
You know, having that kind
That's-
of giving
yeah.
that song a totally different feel. The only that I love that piano solo on that outro, it's so well executed. It's just a little low in the mix. Like I feel like it could have been
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
bumped up a little bit to really make it shine. But yeah, it's great to have that. You know, in a 4-minute song, you've got, you know, really driving groove, great bass line. You've got room for a guitar solo and a piano solo to end it out. Pretty wild stuff all over the place. So what say you about Twin Exhausted?
I give Twin Exhausted 4.5 slices of Scarabus pie.
Ooh, that's a lot of slices of Scarabus pie.
Well, I think that I think it's a great song. Like you said, it's driving and it's just got this great groove to it. And it's got all these like elements in it. Like you hear like the bass is really grooving and like the drums during the pre-chorus doing the hi-hat thing and like the piano at the end, like Gillan's lyrics. I mean, it's the formula is there for it to be just a interesting song, but it's a great song too. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not just a bunch of like great musicians just wanking off. Like,
right.
you know, and I feel like everything on this album, even though I don't remember a lot of it, but I feel like this could be one of those where you could hear the song and like choose to focus on like one instrument and follow it through the whole song. And then you could do that with like every thing. Like you would listen to like the drums, like, and then the next time you hear it, you just pay attention to like the bass. And then the next time you pay attention to, you know, the vocals and, you know, just realize how cool everything is.
Yeah.
But another thing too is like when, you know, when you hear the beginning of that or like Scarabus, you could picture those as like metal songs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you could totally see like somebody else doing a cover version or even him later on, like maybe like 5 years later in Sabbath doing a version of this song with those guys stripped down and like that could be like a metal song, you know, or a heavier song. So and it's still got that heavy element to it, but I mean it's total Gillan and Gillan band, so it's good stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I will give this one a 4 slices of Scarabus pie. Again, I think it's really I like it. I mean, this album was never my go-to. My go-to was always Clear Turbulence, and that album has a definite mood to it that I always really loved. And this one does too. It's just it's as many similarities as I can see now that I may not have noticed in the past. I'm also seeing like how much they kind of reinvented themselves from album to album and tried something new, and that's what I've always loved about this band. All right. So that one was actually yeah, so the next track is called Poor Boy Hero. You think so maybe it's from my culinary background, but I always thought, a poor boy is like a name for a sandwich and a hero is a name for like a similar sandwich. Like a poor boy is like in Louisiana, like, like a fried catfish po' boy or whatever, and
Oh
a
boy.
hero. So this song always makes me think of sandwiches, which I
Hmm.
know is not what he was going for. Um, but where we grew up, you call it a grinder. There you go. Not like the app,
Po'
but
boy grinder.
yeah, poor boy grinder. Exactly. All right. So next song up is Poor Boy Hero. Now we're going into clearer turbulence territory. That's Ian Gillan losing it.
This one's got a little more swing to it.
Yep.
A little more funk. I feel like Glenn Hughes would be really at home on this one.
Even bringing like a clavinet style almost here.
Wow. Good stuff.
So this song, Gillan wrote after Elvis died. His album only came out a couple months after Elvis died, and Elvis was a big hero of Gillan, so this song's all about Elvis.
Oh, wow.
Crazy how he switches from that right into his like normal singing voice, like nothing even happened.
Now, we talked about how Glenn Hughes does that a lot.
Yes.
I think in the Hughes Thrall especially, we were like, how the hell does he do that?
I don't know how you do either separately, never mind switching back and forth so effortlessly. Yeah, parts of this sound like it could be almost on Play Me Out.
Yeah.
Song has a lot going on and a lot of different points, a lot of different parts, considering it's only 3 minutes long.
Wow.
That to me reminds me of that kind of spacey sort of clear turbulence feeling, and that the way it kind of fades out there.
Yeah, that one would have been most at home on Clear Air Turbulence so far. The one thing you can say about the album so far, which I think I don't know if I said it about both of his albums, but like that his vocals were kind of lacking in parts, almost like, oh, I was expecting more from him, like on Child in Time or even Clearer Turbulence. But I mean, I feel so far the first 3 songs, he's just banging it out. He's bringing his A game. Like, you know what I mean? Like these songs, he's really like powering through these songs. He's like, I mean, he's not being delicate. He's just like, all right, I'm just going to like belt it out and like growl and like high register and like, do all this stuff. He's not phoning it in.
No,
He's not
at
phoning
all.
in he's not phoning. And I'm not saying he was on the other albums, but it just sounds like he's just going for it on every song so far, which is like, I think, making the songs.
Yep, I agree.
So,
all right, Poor Boy Hero. What do you think?
You know what? I'm going to go with the 4.
All right.
Yeah, for all the reasons that I just stated. And I like how he worked in some of that funk that made me think of Glenn Hughes.
Yep.
So very kind of not characteristic of what I would think he would do, but also very clear air turbulence-y as well. So.
Yeah, I will give it a 4 as well. I think it's I think if it wasn't for like that funky instrumentation going on, I might give it a 3.5. I love Ian Gillan's vocal performance, but it seems weird. Like it seems like that song is longer than it is. It's very short. But yeah, really, really rocking. Really enjoying this album so far. And like I said,
same.
I bought it. Where's my copy of it? I've probably left it someplace. But yeah, I bought this one. I remember buying this one at HMV sometime in whenever the release was, probably mid 90s or mid to late 90s. And listened to it quite a bit, just never usually as much as Clear Turbulence. But, okay, next up we have the track, another classic Ian Gillan track, Mercury High. Great guitar line.
Hear a little double bass drum going on there.
Oh yeah.
Feels very rockabilly. It makes me think of like an Elf song.
Oh yeah.
Like the feel of it, like you could picture like being on an early Elf album, with that hoochie coochie woman type of thing.
That honky tonk piano going on.
Yeah, that style of song. It's catchy.
Very deep purple sounding breakdown right here. Great little fade out. I like that, kind of fades out almost into it almost like fades into the guitar solo.
Yeah.
I love that little lick that he's repeating there. It's really, really nice. Weird little keyboard thing going on real quiet in the background there.
Trying to hear it, but I couldn't.
It was really subtle. And that
What
song,
a great ending.
that song was released as a single
Oh yeah.
with Madeleine, which is on the next side of the album, as the A side, and this was the B side to that. It was released in January 1978, but didn't chart very well due to being like released right after the holidays and just kind of the overall kind of punk disco thing going on right now. That there wasn't a lot of appetite for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Mercury High. How much pie will you give Mercury High?
Mercury Pie. Instead of Scarabus pie, it can be Mercury Pie.
Eye of a Lizard.
I mean, I like it. I'm just trying to think, like, I don't want to hand out too many. I would be like, I have to be like stingy. Like I have like a bank of like, and I can't waste all my 4s, but oh, the hell with that. I'll give it a 4. I think it's catchy. I think it's catchy. Like
It's
I was
very
thinking
catchy.
of like giving it a 3.5, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't deserve it because I mean, it's like, one thing that I don't like, but I'm not going to take away, any points for it is like, I don't usually like when a song goes, when it has that, that lick that you liked in it. I don't like when the guitar lick. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like when they usually like when the vocalist like will sing that same, like, melody over the riff and like just copy it. I feel like it's just kind of like redundant, it's kind of like, it makes me usually not like a song because I'm like, but I don't know. I liked it. I mean, I like that lick a lot. It's really like it's kind of like happy, upbeat, catchy, and I still kind of get that feeling with Gillan singing over it, almost like it's like, you could have done something else.
It's funny when he kicked in, I thought the exact same thing. I'm gonna find my life in the light of the night, and I thought the same kind of like, oh, he's just doing the same thing the guitar was doing, and I normally also do not like that, but I feel like it worked pretty well in the song.
Yeah, and I mean the vocals again are really great, and I loved his twangy guitar tone too. Like I loved how he just doesn't stick to one guitar tone because he did like the guitar solo on like a different, he had a different tone, and then when he went back to the to that lick, it was just this kind of really like just really thin, twangy, like, I think it was like on purpose, just like gives a lot of variety.
Yeah.
Song. So
man, I keep feeling like my ratings are going to be a little lower than they are, and then I get into the song and I hear it and I feel like my ratings keep coming in higher, but
that's what I think.
I think much like the last song, it was almost a 3.5, but I feel like that melody line on the guitar was so catchy. Like I'll probably wake up tomorrow still humming that thing. So I'm also going to give it a 4. I'm really, I haven't probably listened to this album in maybe a year or so.
Yeah.
And before that, it had probably been a little while. But I'm really feeling like I'm digging it more than I thought I would.
Me too.
And not that I ever disliked it. It just was never like like I said, never a go-to.
Right. Never in the top faves.
All right. So the final track on side 1 of this album is called Pre-Release. So let's see what that's all about. Pre-Release. trying to figure out who that background vocal is. That little riff right before that goes back to the verse is very reminiscent of the previous album as well.
Yeah. I feel like this is another song that, you know, could be heavied up.
Yeah.
Like if you were
great little riffs going on in the background.
Yeah. Yeah, like that sounds like a heavy riff.
And it would all just be in the production and the tone of the instruments. You could turn that into a metal song easy.
Oh yeah.
But I'm glad they didn't, you know? Like, I think it gives it a lot more character this way.
But that's what makes it heavy, and that's what makes it interesting, because a riff doesn't need to be distorted and produced a certain way for it to be heavy.
Listen to that. That's kind of cool. I kind of almost wanted that to go on a little longer and hear it really let loose.
Yeah, it was too short.
And just cueing in on Gustafsson's bass playing, it's just that's awesome what he's laying down in the background there. I feel like they took like the formula that they developed in Clear Turbulence and said, let's hit a lot of these same marks, but maybe not linger on any of them as long as we did on the previous album.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in this song, it's almost a detriment. I would have loved to hear more from Colin and more from Ray in both of those little instrumental segments they got.
Yeah. I agree.
Like, I could have dealt with that keyboard solo being 4 times as long, and quite frankly, the same with the guitar solo. Stretch this out instead of 4.5 minutes and make this a 5.5 minute song. Wow. So much for a simple ending or a fade out.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So what do we think about pre-release? I'm trying to figure out, why is it named pre-release? It's a lot of dark lyrics in this one too. Command me from your lonely grave. Take me back 100 years. Let me kiss your dying tears. Maybe they should have stuck with that crazy ass witch cover.
Oh, well, this is going to get my lowest one right now is 3.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this was filler. Didn't have, I mean, yeah, definitely had a heavy riff to it, but I don't know. I feel like the Gillan songs where he does like pretty much the whole verse and everything with like background vocals and everything, it gets really tiresome, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel like it kind of drives like, na, 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 and then, you know, and then it followed along with what the guitar was doing again. It almost seemed like it was kind of like just plodding along, even though there were little parts in there that broke it up, and which were cool. But also, I agree that the solos could have been longer. This is one song where they could have benefited from like elongated solos.
Right, when Colin Town started to, he was like kind of like, it was almost like he was revving it up, and then you just expect him to just bust loose with like a crazy synth solo, and it just went back to the verse, and you're like, oh,
yeah, just like it built up to nothing.
Or maybe if they did the next verse and then he did it again, and then that time he like went off, and then you'd be like, oh, like finally you get that kind of release of like, oh yes, he's finally going for it, but it just never happened. And then the same thing with Ray Fenwick. He had a really cool, tasty little solo for however many bars, but it could have been 4 times as long. And yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think I'm also going to give it a 3. I liked a lot of all those cool little riffs and things they were doing, but would have loved to see the band get a little more loose on that one.
Well, maybe that's what they called it, pre-release, because they didn't.
Yeah, there was no release. I was like, come on, I just want to hear Colin Towns bust it out. But it especially as the closer to side 1, I would have loved to hear it get a little bit more crazy.
Kind of almost anticlimactic.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, but we flip it over to the second side of the album here, and that brings us to Slags to Bitches. So, like you're at the bar after closing time and somebody's playing the piano here. Ah, nice.
Yeah, the bass is the really standout here.
This is another one he's done with multiple bands, I think. Lyrics of this song for some reason are cracking me up. You throw parties on your own private beach. I see you riding horses too. So I don't know why that amuses me so much. Nice tasty little like composed solo there.
Yeah. See, now this is like one song where I feel like, you know, maybe Mark Nassif could calm down a little bit on the drums.
Yeah, he's
like now I feel like he's just overplaying and it's not really working for me. Well, it's a little too busy.
Those like thundering like.
Well, that stuff is good, but in the verse, like the
hi-hat work he's doing.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like some things you could be a little more sparing with. Like, I don't know, I would have liked to hear like a more straight ahead version of this and see how it compared, because now it just feels like there's too much going on. But I mean, that's also the MO of this band, you know, is you know, they just, if they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it all over the top.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he did this with Gillan. I might be making that up. It's not a Googleable thing. You can't Google like if Ian Gillan did it with Ian Gillan Band or Gillan. It's just there's too many.
There's too many of the same words in there.
It's a non-Googleable thing.
Ungoogleable.
It's ungoogleable. I think melodically though, his melody for the vocal line is really interesting on the song.
Oh.
It's kind of cool. It ends the same way it starts with that. I love that piano intro and outro.
It makes me think of a another elf or white snake type of piano line.
Yep.
You know, maybe same style of music.
All right, slags to bitches. How many slices of the old Scarabus pie are you carving out for this one?
3.5 for this one. I definitely, I don't know. I was somewhere between filler and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that like I said, it was good. I just think that my biggest complaint is the or criticism would be that the drums were just too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could have been a little more sparing. You know, it's like just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, I was definitely going crazy on that one.
So, and I mean, I don't mind like the tom rolls and all that kind of cool stuff. You know, when everything stops, he goes, you know, cool stuff. But yeah, just an average song for me too. Plus some of the weird keyboard things that kind of went in and out. Like I don't know, they didn't seem to really make too much sense. I mean, maybe that's the purpose of Ian Gillan band albums, is to be a little outside the box. But you know, I kind of like the guitar solo. It was probably a highlight.
Yeah, I am matching you with this one, another 3.5. I based on that piano intro and outro, I would really love to hear what this song sounded like with more of that feel to it. That kind of very like more mellow feel, and with like almost like a This Time Around sort of thing with just Gillan with piano and like a synth accompaniment or something. Just to see something a little bit different, because you're getting like you said, a lot of that percussion, and it seemed like they were unsure of where to go. Like they were trying to give this song like this weird intensity that maybe it didn't need. And with a song like Slags to Bitches, I mean, you wouldn't think it would be a a tender ballad, but it seemed like it could have been more on the mellow side, but
Yeah.
still enjoyable, fun. So I like that kind of ending synth solo he did, and got to hear him open up, and that was kind of cool. So, okay. The next track up is a tune called Apathy.
Now this makes me think of like something Whitesnake would do around the same era.
Yep.
And I mean, I'm making all these comparisons to like other bands, but I don't think that Gillan was doing it on purpose. I just like, that's what I'm hearing is like, it's sounding like a lot of other Deep Purple family stuff.
I'm thinking Mark III. I could almost hear this being on Stormbringer or something. It's got that kind of hold on feel to it.
Yeah.
Coming back to those, like that electric piano that he's using, or whatever he's using on that, just sounds great.
You know, we were talking about a while ago that one thing in Deep Purple Mark II is that there weren't really like a lot of choruses, like background vocals and everything. And now I feel like here he's just doing like all like group vocals, or like him with background vocals, whether it's him or whether it's him and another vocalist. I don't know. I kind of feel like that kind of buries it a little bit. You know, he's doing that a little too much.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, I mean, for my personal taste, like I so far I've liked the songs a lot better where he's used that, but in the, you know, but sparingly. Like in the verse, it's just been him belting it out, not him like doing like, you know, doubling or, you know, tripling his vocals with, you know.
Figure it's got to be tough being one of these other guys, because aside from Nas, I don't know Nasif at all as far as his vocals go, but any one of the other four could be a lead singer in most any band. So like having Johnny Gustafson be a background vocals is like kind of crazy. He's such a great singer. Good thing with Fenwick, he's got a great voice. Love that tone on his guitar.
Yeah, good stuff.
Imagine like a double track harmonizing sort of thing. Ending on a Ray Fenwick guitar solo.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That is apathy. How many slices of pie would you give that bad boy?
I don't know why I keep laughing about that. Like, how many pieces of pie? That's so fresh and original. That's
Pieces
like
of pie. We're geniuses.
I know. That's so like from 6 songs ago. Like yawn. You know.
Right. How apathetic are you towards apathy?
3.5.
Moderately apathetic.
Yeah, I mean, I like the kind of like the bluesy riff. Yeah, I really like that. But like I said, I feel like you know, when you pile on too much stuff, sometimes it takes away from it. Like I would have liked to have seen Gillan do the vocal on his own. Like without a background vocal.
Yep.
Because like when I hear, I think particularly him too, when I hear him do that, it just kind of buries it. You know what I mean? It's just like it makes I don't know, it almost makes the song instantly like less interesting because you're like, oh, okay, so the whole thing's like a chorus,
Mm-hmm.
you know? That's just how I hear it.
I don't think anybody did it better than Mark III and Mark IV Deep Purple as far as like Coverdale and Hughes switching off vocals, and it would have been really cool. I mean, granted, it's the Ian Gillan band, so I don't know, but to hear him and him take a verse or Fenwick take a verse or Gustafsson take a verse would have been really interesting, especially a song like this that reminds me so much of Hold On. Um, that's what I kept coming back to, and I also give it a 3.5. I think mostly on the strength of that really great groove they're laying down. And the drums are a little frantic for this song. They worked really well on the most of the first side of the album.
Yeah.
Here, I think it could have been a little bit more
Hold
downplayed.
back. Yeah.
And having, either having Gillan do it solo or having Fenwick or Gustafsson take a line here or there, what might have really made it a little cooler, but I really dig the feeling on that song. I like it a lot. All right, but you know who doesn't like it?
Who?
Elaine. She is mad. Let's see what she has to say about the song. Sounds angry so far. I think that's Johnny Gustafsson hitting the higher notes there, and I think it works really well here.
This is a heavy song.
Really heavy. So, do British people pronounce this Elena?
Uh-huh.
Because in the U.S. it would be Elaine. Here's another mad attack. That's a great thing to say right before this riff. Colin Towns is going off.
Wow.
Madeleine sounds like a lot of work. You don't hold back when we get into a fight. She comes in swinging with a left and a right. Man. I think announcing each solo with "Here's another mad attack" is pretty badass.
Didn't think of that.
Fenwick keeps doing those double track harmonized things in a solo. It sounds awesome.
Oh, you suck. Oh, that's such a tease.
It's really, well, kind of given the subject matter of the song, who knows, Madeleine might have killed the protagonist.
Wow. I gotta say, that's probably the most frustrating but creative way to end a song. Because it was just like it was still up here, and then they were just kind of like, yeah. Meh.
I think
Like,
whoever is singing these lyrics was shot in, well, you know, it says she pulls out her 44, you won't be doing no jive no more. I think this guy was killed by Madeleine before he could finish his
maybe.
guitar solo.
Well, Madeleine or Elena gets 4 slices of pie.
Yeah.
Despite what I said earlier, like on the song before, it works on this one though. It works.
Does. Yeah. And I think it was the fact that of all people, Gillan was singing the low part, and you had, I think it's Gustafsson singing, he's singing that really high. And man, for a song this like, I don't want to say complicated, but like the lyrics, they were so tight together on those lyrics, you could almost not. And some of it has to probably do with the mix too. If you're mixing down that background vocal enough, you could listen to the song a few times, not paying attention, and not even realize, oh yeah, this is a double tracked vocal, or there's a second vocal in there somewhere. It's done really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I will also give this one
good.
a 4. I dig it. I think it was really heavy, had a lot of cool parts. Like you said, the ending is frustrating, but I like it at the same time. It was really well done. 4 slices of that delicious Scarabus pie.
And actually, the riff really, it made me think of something to Come Taste the Band. Oddly enough, the dun 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 dun. Oh yeah, that's I Need Love.
Love Child, right?
Love Child. That's right. Is Love something? Yeah, Love Child. Yeah,
good call. I didn't even pick up on that, but
which, I mean, you know, that's, you know, I love that song and that riff. So I mean, for this to, you know, sound similar to it, like I'm again hearing a lot of Deep Purple family similarities, and it's all like what my ear's picking up, and it's all in a good way. So, and I mean, plus you have Ian Gillan on it, so what's not to like?
What is not to love about Ian Gillan? Nothing that I've ever figured out. Okay, so that brings us to the second to last song on the second side and on the album, and that song is a track called Country Lights. This is another song where there's a bunch of songs in this album where I feel like I've heard him perform it in other contexts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, how so?
Like, I feel like I've heard a live version of it, or I've heard him do it with Gillan, or maybe heard him do it solo somewhere. That band that he put together, like in between House of Blue Light and Battle Rages On, like maybe it was one of those. I don't know.
What was it like? like Keith Rocket and the Moonshine Band or something.
Garth Rocket and the Moon. Is it the Moonshiners?
Ah, it was close.
Something like that. Keith Rocket.
Yeah. I don't know why I came with Keith Rocket.
I like Keith Rocket. It sounds like he could have been the drummer of like the drummer for like an early drummer for Poison or Warrant or something. Listen to that like far away guitar sound. This is kind of a clear, turbulent sort of groove. But that section would have went on for like 2 full minutes. All sorts of, I hear like a little guero in the background.
Guero.
Little, just hitting that like offbeat tambourine, just all sorts of Mark Nausey craziness going on. Wow. There you go. Country Lights.
Turn them off.
What's turn them off? I'm trying to sleep.
Kidding. Turn off those country lights. I'm trying to sleep. Turn off that. Do you remember that Bugs Bunny cartoon where like he was like running away from Elmer Fudd and he came and he flipped it on and he's like pretending to be in bed and he goes, turn off that light. And then he turned it off. Yes. And then he ran away. He was like, hey, wait a minute. And then he came back.
It's funny to think of Ian Gillan doing that.
Well, you could probably scream like that too.
That wascally Ian Gillan. All right.
So yeah, 3. I feel like it was filler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think.
Yeah, and I feel like by this
kind of
song,
wasn't really paying attention. You know.
Yeah, I feel like by this song you're kind of you're like, okay, we've had 8 songs already. Madeleine would have been a good closer. Do we really need 2 more songs? Like, is Country Lights breaking enough new ground by this album standards that we really necessarily needed to throw it on there?
Yeah, that's true. I'm kind of getting like, Ian Gillan band fatigued.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, this pretty much sounds like every other song before it. So like you said, do we really need it? There was nothing really outstanding in it, just another song.
Yeah, well done, but not, doesn't,
yeah,
not a standout.
Right.
Yeah, I'm starting to see, like, I don't think before we did this episode that I really understood. I'm like, what? I was always like, why did Ian Gillan band disband? Like, what? Like, why did he break them up and form Gillan? And now I'm kind of seeing it, like they were trying to go for something, and it's like it was almost like they should have either gone into that Gillan mode and been a straight ahead rock band, or they should have fully embraced the Clear Turbulence formula and carried that forward. This is kind of like a middle ground between the two. And while I enjoy it, and there's a lot of great parts to it, I can definitely see why they made that decision. Which brings us to our last track on the album, and that is Fool's Mate. That is a tasty bass line, though, I gotta say. That's like
That is all over the place.
that's like Clear Turbulence, the song, you know? Just
I love that line. Hey, stupid, I love you. That's great. You know, I don't pick up on lyrics that often, but that was pretty good. And it's real. You know, it sounds like some couples I know.
yeah. Haven't really heard him cut that loose since early in the first side.
Yeah. Love it.
Hey, stupid.
I think it's a great way to refer to somebody. Hey, come on, stupid. There was actually it's funny that word comes in because there was a newer, like maybe within the past 10 years, episode of The Simpsons where they had a tour guide who spoke broken English, and he was just like, hey, I'm going to talk to the stupids. And he was talking about the tour group, and he referred to them as the stupids.
The stupid.
He goes, hang on, I go talk to the stupids, you know, and it's just like, hey, okay, everybody, you shut up. Just words like that, like shut up, stupid, you know, it's like they're new and fresh again if you use them just right.
Yeah, you gotta use them just right. I remember that
Yeah.
I worked with this guy years ago, and every so often, like someone would like you'd say something to him, and he'd just look at you and he'd be like, "Are you stupid?" And it doesn't sound funny when but just the way he delivered it was just always made me laugh for some reason, even though he's calling me stupid. But
I worked with a guy who would refer to people. He'd refer to people as ding dongs.
hey, ding dong.
He'd just be like, he'd be like, Oh, what a ding dong.
I've done that.
Or ding-a-ling.
I'm
like
also
stuff
fond
like
of
that.
dum dum. That guy's a dum dum. It's
Because
such a
you don't
delicate
use words
insult.
like that for like, but you don't use words like that for years and years. And then you hear like grown people using them like in everyday life, and you're just like, what the hell?
Hey,
And then
dum
it's
dum.
hilarious. It's like, you just call him a dum dum or a ding-a-ling or like whatever. Yeah, dum dum. Isn't what that green alien used to call Fred Flintstone?
Oh yeah, not Gizmo. What was his name?
Oh, the
Gadget.
Great Gazoo.
The Gazoo.
No, the Great Gazoo.
Hey, dum dum.
Okay, dum dum. Come to think of it, when did the friggin' Flintstones have an alien?
Well, that was
That's weird. I never
it was
questioned that.
yeah, it was on for years and years and years because prior to The Simpsons, right? That was like the longest running syndicate
Cartoon,
or
yeah.
cartoon, like primetime cartoon. But The Simpsons has
Yeah,
probably
but
blown it away by like 4 times by this point, right?
oh yeah, I think they're on season like 32 now.
That's insane.
It is.
I remember watching them
But
on the
yeah, it's
Tracy Ullman show with my parents, and like they're still on.
I know.
Where they
Not
had
very good these days though.
that that holiday special with the dog, and I was just like, oh, this is cool that they're doing this like kind of one-off thing. It's like 32 years later, they're still doing it.
Oh, guess it's not a one-off.
Yeah, they're doing okay for themselves. It's good for them. All right, so now we've got to rate. We got to rate the Fool's Mate. What say you about Fool's Rate, my friend? Fool's Rate.
Fool's
What
rate.
say you about rating the Fool's Mate?
I give Fool's Mate a 3. I mean, at this point, I was actually not really even paying attention. Like there was nothing to differentiate it from the last few songs.
Yeah.
I think it just got a little old. I mean, again, nothing it takes away from these guys. I mean, great musicians, great songwriters, performers, but I mean, at this point, album's too long. So
Yeah.
filler.
Yeah, I will agree with you and also give it a 3. I think we're pretty in lockstep on this album, uh, with one exception. Um, but yeah, and I almost wonder if we go back and listen to some of those earlier songs, if we'd rate them as high. But I feel like it started really strong, and yeah, it was just more of the same. I feel like they could have killed 2, maybe even 3 songs and had a pretty solid album here. But
Yeah.
it was a lot of, by the end you're just like, I feel like we've heard this already. It wasn't breaking a lot of new ground.
Right. So there you go, folks.
There you go. We got our Ian Gillan Band final album. And look where it falls. It falls with a lot of Ian Gillan stuff in the
Yeah,
in the
let's see. So
here.
7.25. 7.25. We pretty much, like you said, lockstep, rated it the same ish. But actually, yeah, that's really interesting. Is that it rated rated a little bit higher than than Share Kazoo and Child in Time.
Yep.
And seeing a little slightly more than is Malice in Wonderland, Elements, Play Me Out. So it's kind of weird. It falls like in between like Ian Gillan albums, but also other solo projects from Mark II members, which is kind of interesting.
And then if you go way up there, you see Clear Turbulence ranked significantly higher. A lot on the strength of my rating, but your rating was higher than the other two, by a pretty good margin. So,
although, yeah, I mean, I still think that this album has some strong material on it. So and you know what? And maybe placement of songs has a lot to do with it too. Like you said, like if we had gone back and listened to the first side, like if we had flipped it and some of these songs had been on the first side, would it have been different?
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I hard to objectively say. I would say
Yeah.
no, just because I don't know. I think the other songs have already, they're burned. They're burned in my brain, like Scarabus, and
Hmm.
we already know them. So
Yep.
hard to say.
Yep. I agree.
But yeah, overall, pretty solid album.
Yeah. I mean,
I
definitely
never listened to
enjoyable
the whole
album.
thing, but I'll pick out like a couple of songs here and there to listen to sometimes from this and put it on. But it's not one that I listened to all the way through.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, so that's it. That's the end of Ian Gillan Band. Like we said earlier, this did not have a huge splash when it released. There's a lot of punk and disco in the scene that uh, took a lot of the energy away from it. They released a 5-track single sampler to the radio stations, and it had Scarabus, Twin, Exhausted, Slags to Bitches, Madeline, and Fool's Mate on it. Um, After the album release, only in Gillan and Towns would remain around. The rest would be sent on their way, and Towns and Gillan remained to kind of reform Gillan from the ashes of the Ian Gillan Band. Gillan admitted in his, I think he said it in his book, that he said he had no real control over the band, and we've talked about that before, and we even talked to Ray Fenwick about it actually when he was on the show. We asked him, and he verified that kind of like Ian Gillan let them do whatever the hell they wanted. It was not
Mm.
he was not pulling all the strings. Um, so after this breakup, Nausif goes on. And he works with Thin Lizzy, Gary Moore, and Phil Lynott solo. Gustafson, interestingly, goes and works almost immediately after this with Gordon Gilstrap, who did an instrumental album called The Peacock Party. And that's interesting because it's based on the book that was the sequel to The Butterfly Ball. So Johnny Gustafson performed on The Butterfly Ball, and then he also performed on another album which was based on the sequel to The Butterfly Ball by someone else completely different. So
Mm.
it's an unusual album. I've listened to it. It's all instrumental, so it's a little different, but interesting. He
Mm.
goes on to work with the Pirates and many other groups. He does a lot of session work, and he also, prior to this album, worked on a solo album in 1976 called Goose Grease, but it never saw any release until 1997. They did like a release of that album, and it's actually
Mm.
pretty interesting. Hopefully, we'll cover it one day. Gillan speaks very fondly of Gustafson. He refers to him as one of his heroes from the Mersey Beats, and complimented his writing of the bass line "Love Is the Drug" by Roxy Music. Ray Fenwick goes on to continue to be a prolific session musician. Um, in Gillan's book, I just made a note of this. He tells a story of after a show, and they go to Japan and they play a show, and in Japan, obviously, Ian Gillan Band was probably saw most of their success there, and people loved them. And after a show, somebody gave Gustafson a baby and asked them to sign their baby. So he signed the baby, which is great.
That's
Imagine
interesting.
and if we have Ray Fenwick on again, we'll have to ask him about that because that's just a great signing a
Yeah, sign.
baby.
Yeah, that's. How do you even preserve that? You don't.
I guess you don't. You get the baby tattooed. I guess strap it
Poor,
down and tattoo it.
poor baby.
Um, yeah, it would not be fun for the baby. Um, uh,
A lot different than those people that get earrings for their babies. It's just
oh,
like
poor babies.
literally poor
I know.
baby.
I know. I haven't even gotten earrings for my daughter, and she's 5. Um, 5.5. God. So Island Records had the rights to the Ian Gillan Band material, and they took full advantage of this when Gillan reformed with Deep Purple in 1984. it took them a couple years, but they released an Ian Gillan album called What I Did on My Vacation, which was a greatest hits collaboration of his Ian Gillan band and Gillan stuff all on one album. So they released that in 1986. So kind of a funny name for that. On the CD release for Scarabus, there's one extra track, and it's called My Baby Loves Me. It's a live track, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll save that for another day when we cover some Ian Gillan band bonus material. Gillan says that critics seemed to like Mercury High, Twin Exhausted, and Slags to Bitches, but the band was having trouble shaking the jazz fusion description, and that was kind of considered a killer in those days. So that is why he opted to go for Gillan and go for something a little harder. Island was not pleased with the sales for the Ian Gillan band. They decided to kind of part ways. A part of the deal in Gillan leaving was that he got to keep the rights to his catalog and publish it under Clear Air Music Publishing, which he did. So he got to retain the rights, which is a good thing. Good thing for us, and good thing for the future and him being able to release some additional stuff. So there you have it. That's Scarabus. That's all I got to say. Let us know what you think on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If you've got if you think we're fools for our ratings on these songs, or if you think we're right in line. I think it's overall, I have nothing but fond feelings towards Ian Gillan band in general. And I don't know, I enjoy this album, but it's a little unbalanced maybe, but I think overall pretty good stuff.
Hear, hear.
All right. And with that, my friend, I will talk to you next week. And who knows what kind of craziness we'll get into. Who knows what our rating scale will be next week. It's going to be dependent on what the album is or subject is.
Yeah, what in the Sam Hill are we going to get ourselves into next week?
What kind of crazy antics are we going to get into? Unbelievable.
Tune in and find out, folks.
The cast of characters, the unbelievable antics. All right, we'll see you next week, everybody.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple Podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.